Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Propane Fitness Podcast. We're here today with a special guest, Bryce Lewis, who is an owner of The Strength Athlete, along with a few other coaches, 3DMJ athlete as well, really strong guy, used to coach me, and really interesting person all around. So obviously Yusuf's here as well, and I guess kick off with Bryce. Do you want to just introduce yourself for people who perhaps haven't heard of you, and then also talk about The Strength Athlete a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. So I am a competitive powerlifter in the 93 and 105 kilo weight classes based in the United States. And I've been raw drug-free powerlifting for about 7 years now. Before that, I did natural bodybuilding briefly and played collegiate volleyball as well. But more currently, I coach athletes through our business, The Strength Athlete. Coach athletes around the world through raw, drug-free powerlifting, focusing on effective programming strategies and science-based applications.
Sounds good, Bryce. So what does a day in the life of Bryce look like?
Well, this is my full-time job. Currently, I'm coaching about 50 athletes around the world, and together TSA coaches closing in on 90 athletes. So I kind of have to balance myself in between responding to emails for athletes, creating new programs, starting up new athletes, but also a lot of things involving social media, website. I do t-shirt design, Excel design, and just making sure that we're providing the most effective programming for athletes possible.
And is this your first experience, Bryce, with training people, or were you a personal trainer leading up to this, or is it just kind of experience from working with people online that you kind of generate an experience with personal training?
No, I did some personal training on my own in person with people in Southern California where I used to live. And that was probably about a year long, but that wasn't my only coaching experience. I coached club level and high school level volleyball for about 6 years as well. And really feel like that was a valuable experience in being able to assess people's needs and be able to effectively incorporate those into what's best for them as far as training, whether that is from volleyball or just someone that wanted to get in shape, or now through powerlifting. But yeah, that's really where the majority of my experience came from. And TSA has been active for a little bit over a year now. We celebrated our year anniversary early in October. And I can say that my coaching has gotten exponentially better through that period of time. So I'm happy, honored, and just lucky, to be honest.
Awesome. I think you've got 2 other coaches working with you, is that right? Or maybe 3?
Yeah, we have 3 other coaches working. We have Hani Jazrelli, who is a 93 kilo lifter based in Southern California, extremely high level lifter, an excellent coach as well. We have Eric Bodhorn based in Florida, who is an excellent coach with a few important letters behind his name as well. And we have Reed Frisbee, who's based in New Zealand, who has worked with 3D. Well, all of us have worked with 3DMJ before, and that's how we've met up.
It's pretty cool. You guys get to be able to rub shoulders with some pretty high-level lifters and the guys from 3DMJ, so that must certainly diffuse into your coaching quality as well.
For whatever reason, 3DMJ seemed to attract just good people, all around. Not just strong people or really shredded people or just people who came in with an iron work ethic, but something about 3DMJ and just the community and the coaches themselves just help foster that and bring that out in people, even if it's already present. So really a nice network that I know you guys are part of as well.
Yeah, a great bunch of guys. So how do you currently train personally, and how do you approach your diet?
Right, so my training right now is a variation of daily undulating periodization, which essentially means that I'm just doing different intensities and different repetition amounts on different days of the week. But primarily my training is focused around the competition movements. So I'm a powerlifter, so to get better at powerlifting, the idea is do the competition movements more frequently so that you can get more volume under your belt. So my days revolve heavily around squatting, benching, and deadlifting. I train 4 days a week. My squatting frequency is anywhere from 3 to 4 times a week. Benching frequency is around the same, and deadlifting frequency is around 2 times a week with minimal accessory work.
And what about diet, Bryce? How do you approach that?
So as far as nutrition, right now I'm eating around 2,400 calories, and I do track my macros right now, in varying degrees of severity as far as tracking goes. So right now I'd like to be a little bit on the leaner side to make the cut to 93s in March easier. This competition coming up in 2 weeks, I'm competing in the 105 kilo class. So I've got quite a bit of wiggle room there. I think right now I'm around 97 or so. So essentially the goal right now is to make the cut to 93s easier after this competition. So I'm eating more or less for performance and maintaining body weight right now.
How heavy were you before you started cutting calories?
I was, I think at my peak, 224 pounds, which...
So just under 100 kilos.
Yeah, just under 100.
99 point something.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So that's quite a lot of weight to lose. In terms of dropping the weight, do you find there's, is there a lot you can do to mitigate the strength losses with getting down into 93s?
Yeah, actually, I think if you diet effectively, you can really keep a majority of your strength gains. And there's a caveat there that we're not talking about, losing 20 or 30 kilos, because something like that can really affect strength levels. But I've done cuts of around 20 pounds before, and I've kept anywhere from all of my strength to around 97% of my strength. So if you do it correctly, I think it can be done very well. And by correctly, I mean give yourself enough time, keep protein levels high, and generally give yourself enough time so that by the time you diet down, essentially I like to undershoot the goal. So for me, it'd be really nice to get down to around 92 kilos and then get into a slight caloric surplus before the competition.
Awesome.
Right.
So I think, Bryce, I think I'm right in saying that DUP is something that's fairly recent for you. And I think before that, I think you used a bit of RPE style training. Would that be right?
Yeah, exactly. So calling it DUP, I guess, is recent for me. So I've been doing this style of training methodology for around 16 weeks. But my training had been undulating on a daily basis before. It just wasn't given the name, if you know what I mean.
Okay. And that's quite a big change from, I believe, West Side, which was...
Yeah.
Would you say that was kind of your main training philosophy for the most part of your powerlifting career?
It was. I was doing a variation of West Side for probably 2 or 3 years because it was effective. I think I started off, my very first quote-unquote powerlifting program was West Side, and then I did some Shaiko for a while because that was effective, but West Side was kind of where I started.
I guess just to give listeners a little bit of context, do you want to just briefly discuss kind of your best gym lifts and also best competition lifts?
Sure. So best gym lifts were at the end of this recent training cycle I did. I hit a 620 squat, a 450, these are pounds, 450 bench press, and a 725 deadlift. And in competition, my best squat is 585, bench press 400, or just a little bit over 400, and deadlift 700 as well at Raw Nationals this year.
So that's well into the elite total bracket, if I'm right.
Yeah, exactly. So currently one of the top U.S. guys, kind of chasing Lane, LS McLean, and a few of these other guys up at the top of drug-free 93 kilo class.
Awesome. So leading off from that then, if you were to kind of have the opportunity to kind of go back to the beginning of your training career and meet baby Bryce, as it were, and you were able to program your training from the very beginning up to now to give you the best chance of being kind of the best powerlifter you could be, I suppose, how would you go about building someone's training cycle from the ground up?
That's an awesome question. And I've been reading a little bit of periodization by Tudor Bompa, and they stress the importance of, at an early age, working on lots of different functional movement patterns of sport and delaying specification for as long as possible. So delaying sport specification for as long as possible. And there's some interesting study work that was done showing that people that specified in their sport before the age of 18, and we're talking here about, all types of different sports, but gymnastics, for example, it's very common for athletes to specify in their sport at a very early age. And what they found was that there's an extreme pressure to perform, that the athletes will achieve peak levels of success before they turn 18, but they won't ever be able to duplicate those post-training, and a bunch of other things that I can probably, link in some studies to this as well. But based off of that kind of information, I think I set myself up pretty well by accident, because I played tennis for a while. I played volleyball for quite a while, which in training is pretty varied. I played that in high school for 3 years and in college for 3 years, and then did bodybuilding, which in some senses is still more generalized training, but getting a little bit more specific because now we're doing more barbell movements. And finally, around 23 or so is when I really started getting into powerlifting. So, maybe the sport would have been different. Maybe it would have been gymnastics if I would have gone back and picked. I think if I have a kid ever, I'd really I wouldn't force them, but I really try to encourage them to do gymnastics because I admire it and I think that it provides a really nice generalized background. And Yusuf, I know you're into gymnastics too, right?
Yeah, big fan. Actually, just going back to what you said about specializing too early, can I just clarify? So when you said the kids specialize early, is that in terms of doing more sport-specific training as opposed to general conditioning, or is that specializing within the sport? So picking a certain event for gymnastics or something like that?
No, that's correct. So specifying the sport in general. Here in America, football, for instance. So kids would specialize in their sport of football at an early age and stay with football, and all training and all diet and programming and stuff is specifically devoted toward football. That would be an example. Not like gymnastics and choosing that you want to do floor exercises over high bar or something.
Oh, cool. It is interesting you say that you would have pursued gymnastics, if you were speaking to baby Bryce again. I'm surprised it's not more common than it is, actually, just because it's very much about enhancing your capacity to do something. And I feel strength sports both complement it and are also very similar philosophically, if I can be as abstract as that.
Yeah, I think so. I think, unfortunately, there's a few barriers, both financially, in that I think in learning gymnastics, you almost need a coach, and you need a coach full time, and that requires a good deal of money, and also probably some stigma towards male gymnasts, at least towards being
for sure
less manly or something like that.
That's true. I think the best way to assuage that kind of stigma is deadlift over 500 pounds, and then people tend to stop asking questions.
There you go. Exactly. Just bring your barbell. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Just if you pull a front lat spread, usually ends the conversation. So, speaking of front lat spreads, if you had a sort of a beginner come up to you just wanting to look a bit better, what would you recommend in terms of diet and training?
So, what level of beginner are we talking?
Should we say rank beginner for argument's sake?
So super beginner, so someone just starting off.
Yeah.
Lots of exercise variation, but still focusing on volume. So finding some way to quantify training in such a way that you can progress that load over time. Probably lots of lunge movements, beginner movements for some type of squat variation, but probably not barbell squatting. And the same type of idea for upper body as well. And
That's
then
interesting. So no barbell squatting. Is that because of the technical side?
Yeah, because of the technical side. Because if the main focus is to get better and pushing volume, really, I'd rather someone stay safer and focus on something where you can get lots of volume without having to focus on the technical aspect. And I think you can get barbell squatting in for them, but I would teach it as a complex movement, which means start it off with a small amount of their total amount of volume and gradually increase that as they get more efficient with it.
That's quite a sensible approach. So I think sometimes you see a lot of these online hardcore beast mode characters that just say, you must squat, otherwise, you're a pussy and all this stuff. But ultimately, if it's not safe for a beginner to try and do that, then it's not very productive.
Yeah, and I think now there's a push toward minimalism. Almost, so people are focusing more on purely squatting, benching, and deadlifting. But we have to realize that the people that are making that push are probably powerlifters or are coaching powerlifters, because that's what we do in competition. We squat, bench, and deadlift, and so the majority of our training, at least as you close in on competition, should mimic that.
If leading off from that, Bryce, if somebody is just sort of training by themselves and has the internet as their learning resource rather than an in-person coach, do you think that squatting, benching, deadlifting and other kind of basic barbell movements can be learned from either reading tutorials or watching videos, or do you think it's important to have in-person contact, at least initially?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it really depends on the person. Early on, and even still today, I learned very well by watching people at a high level do something. So sumo deadlifting is relatively new to me. I started about 16 weeks ago. Before that, and for my entire powerlifting, I've been doing conventional deadlifting. But one of the best ways that I've been learning is by watching some of the guys that I see as idols in terms of their mastery of sumo deadlifting, and just by finding YouTube videos in different angles, and then asking a few follow-up questions from some coaches that I trust. But yeah, I don't think that if you don't have someone in person that you're just going to be incapable of mastering the movement. You just have to be willing to put in the work.
Yeah, I think I definitely learn in a similar way. Like I know watching, I also switched over to sumo, I think probably around a similar time as when you did. And I remember watching kind of Dan Green as a good example, obviously someone who moves a tremendous amount of weight using a sumo stance.
Mm-hmm.
But I always found squatting quite hard to learn just by watching, just because it's so, the stance, the styles can change so much depending on kind of leverages and how the bar placement feels, etc.
Yeah, that's true. And, with working for you, you've kind of settled on a stance that you don't see a lot of people doing. A relatively wide stance that you probably had to figure out through a good amount of trial and error.
Yeah, it just happens to get me red lighted quite a lot, unfortunately. So.
But we always make fun of Johnny being a daddy long legs just because of his leverages. And yeah, it seems to help him with deadlift, but yeah, it caused him some grief with squat and bench.
Yeah.
On the sumo deadlift, do you still train conventional deadlifts as a training tool? And do you think it's useful for people who do deadlift sumo in competition?
Yes, although I think the closer you get to competition, the more you should be practicing whatever stance you're going to use in competition. We're a little bit undecided right now as to whether we're going to ultimately pull sumo or conventional, because this will be my first meet where I'm pulling sumo in competition. So it's a little bit of an experiment. But when we first brought up the idea of trying sumo, Eric Helms is my coach. He originally put it in as an accessory movement. So most of my volume was coming from conventional deadlifting, with the secondary amount coming from sumo. Now the roles have switched. So a majority is coming from sumo and a secondary amount is coming from conventional. I'm not sure if ultimately conventional is just going to be phased out, but I do feel that it has value. There's slightly different muscle activation patterns for the conventional sumo, more quad activation for the sumo, more posterior chain activation for the conventional. So it certainly has value.
Cool.
I think I just switched to sumo without telling Eric, to be honest. Yeah. It certainly feels a lot better for me, so I hope it works well. Are you able to pull the same loads with sumo as you were with conventional?
It's close. So I'm pulling probably about 98% of what I've pulled conventional, and some of that probably has to do with just getting more efficient with the movement pattern.
Awesome. So just one last thing on the kind of the person looking to just look a bit better, Bryce. How would you change training for somebody who is like, assuming that you obviously you've been a bodybuilder yourself, competed in bodybuilding, from what I understand. How would you change the training if bodybuilding was the focus rather than powerlifting?
Yes, that's a good question. If I'm not mistaken, there's a study by Schoenfeld that compared two training models that were volume equated. So same volume, one was a quote-unquote bodybuilding program, and one was a quote-unquote powerlifting program. And they both achieved similar hypertrophy over that period of time. But obviously the powerlifting program, the athletes generally gain more strength. So with something like that in mind, I would create a generally powerlifting style program, but make sure that we don't neglect body parts and focus on the weak points for the specific athlete's physique. So if they wanted more back work, we put in more back work if back was a lagging body part. And as far as pure powerlifting programs, there's not a whole lot of focus on arms. So, definitely adding in some arms and probably some shoulders would be a good idea.
Awesome. I think I remember you mentioning that you would use a lot of dumbbell work comparatively if bodybuilding was the focus rather than powerlifting. Is that something you'd still consider doing?
Yeah, that's very true. And actually, I'd have no problem with doing leg pressing work. When I was doing bodybuilding, I used to love dumbbell pressing and leg pressing, and it just felt good. And I felt like I was activating a lot of muscle and just working well. And it's totally anecdotal, and I don't have anything to support that. But based off of those things, I would probably incorporate more dumbbell work for upper body for a bodybuilding athlete, and not be afraid of machines, I guess, for the lower body.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I guess it removes the focus from a barbell with a certain weight on, and the goal is to move it from point A to point B, and sort of refocuses on the muscle contraction and then kind of improving from an aesthetic point of view rather than just focusing on strength. So the last question, Bryce, was based around mobility. I know from watching a YouTube channel, you've kind of got a significant focus on mobility in your own training. Assuming somebody wasn't injured and didn't have any specific niggles or issues mobility-wise, how would you go about kind of dropping mobility training into somebody's weekly training split?
Yeah, so that's good. Most of what people talk about when they talk about mobility is if your X hurts, do Y. So it's more, it's less preventative and more treatment based. People look up mobility stuff in general, not because they just want to be more mobile, but because something is hurting them and they're trying to fix it. So if someone didn't really have any of those pre-existing things, generally I think the only reason to do mobility work is either that or preventative. And if you can hit full range of motion, and assuming we're talking about either a powerlifter or someone that does compound movements, if you can hit full range of motion comfortably and express a good amount of control under heavy load through those ranges of movement, then just maintenance stuff. So making sure that you can hit a nice lunge and keep a vertical upright torso, that you have full range in the shoulders. So just periodically checking on range of motion and pain and kind of using that. I really like, and I encourage all of our athletes to get in a good dynamic warm-up, but that's not really mobility-based.
I think there's definitely been kind of an exaggeration of the importance of mobility work, and I know becoming a supple leopard and MWOD probably help perpetuate that, and you see kind of articles encouraging daily mobility drills regardless of whether or not you actually need them, and questioning how much mobility do we actually need to be kind of an effective weightlifter or powerlifter. Is that that seems to mirror the thought process that you've had? Yeah,
that's true. And I see the same push that you did, and I think it comes from Kelly Starrett applying the idea of the WOD to stretching and to mobility work. The idea that you do something every day towards this goal in the same way that there's a WOD for a workout. He kind of created the same thing for stretching. And while a great idea, because it got so many people thinking about what they actually look like when they're doing, complex movement patterns, it definitely went overboard. And I've tried to rein that in a little bit and say, hey, let's at least have reasons for what we're doing.
Cool. Thanks a lot for your time, Bryce. Just wanted to ask one more thing of what the plan is for the future of the strength athlete.
So we're nearly at capacity. Athletes drop off and come on all the time, but I don't see the company as a whole getting bigger. What I do see that's happening really on a daily and weekly basis is us refining our craft and getting better at peaking athletes for competition and just providing better coaching and a high degree of individualization and specialization.
Pretty cool. So how can we follow you on social media?
So the main thing you can do is go to thestrengthathlete.com to check out the new website. We've got a new store with some cool shirts and sweatshirts and stuff like that up there. You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/Bryce126. And you can find The Strength Athlete or myself on either Instagram or Facebook as well.
Awesome. All right. Thanks very much for your time, Bryce. It's been great speaking to you.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Bryce.
Yeah, he's insane. I was just having a conversation about him yesterday.
It sounds like you'd more or less beat him, to be honest. Well, I guess he has got that 350 deadlift. But
he does have that 350.
But other than that, I think you've 270 squat maybe. I think it sounds like you beat him. To be honest,
up there. We'll see. And to be honest, Brett Gibbs, even at a weight class below, is just a tremendous athlete. Do you know much about him?
Not heard of him. No.
Okay, he's from New Zealand, and I think I first heard about him because Johnny Candido met him at Raw Worlds in the 183 kilo class. I think he can beat me a weight class below, which is crazy.
There are some crazy people.
I love how many freaks there are in raw drug-free powerlifting. Because it lends credibility to the sport too. It's like I think a lot of people these days think that if you want to achieve anything good, it has to be with drugs.
Yeah.
And as much as possible, I want to dispel that.
I think I saw like Dan Green at a meet recently hit like a 360 deadlift.
Mm-hmm.
And then watching Tom Martin pull 350 at nationals, it's just like if you were to stand them next to each other, it's insane. But,
it is insane. It shows that muscle mass is important, but how functional your muscle mass is equally important.
Just being a mentalist with long hair and a beard. I'm sure you'll eventually catch up with Lane. He's not that far ahead of you, is he? Like, got you on squat or something?
No, he's not. And he's also got 5 years on me. So there's that to be said, too.
Well, I hope you get to Worlds. I'm sure you will.
I really, really hope so.
Yeah.
One of these years, it's going to happen.
Awesome. All right, Bryce, we won't keep you for much longer, but thanks again for your time, and we'll let you know when we post this. Send you a link.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Bryce.
Talk to you guys soon.
See you, Bryce.
Cool.
See ya.